How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Mem, Daf 40 of Masechta Gittin. Friends, well, Friends, we talk about Avodim. Okay, we're going to start about Daf Lametesim of Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. Omer Bzeire, Omer Bchanino, Omer Vashi, Omer Rebbe. Eved shenoso es baschirin b'fnei Rabo, yotza lecheres. So if you have an Eved who gets married to a Bas Chorin, Bifnei Rabo, and his owner is right over there, is right there, Yotze L'Cheres. So Memele, he goes free, becomes a Ben Chorin, because meaning an Eved is not allowed to marry a Bas Chorin. He can marry an Eved Kanani can marry a Shifra Kanainis. Well, I don't even know if it's like marriage; they can be together, but he can't marry a Bas Chorin. So from the fact that the Eved is marrying a Bas Chorin and the master is there, so then clearly what the master is implying is that the Eved is no longer an Eved; he's a Ben Chorin. It says, Rabbi Yochanan, Kol kach yeshcha biyotcha. Wow. You know so much Bekiyas about Rebbe's teachings. Va'ani shone, yet what I know is hakosev shtar erisin l'shivchoso, that a fellow who writes a shtar erisin, he writes in a document, hariat mukudeshes li b'shtar zo, I guess kedas Moshe v'Yisro, and he gives a shtar erisin to his shifcha. He's getting engaged to his shifcha knainis. So I knows akosev shtar erisin shifchaso, a fellow who writes and gives a shtar erisin to his shifcha. Reb Meir omer mekudeshes. Reb Meir says that they are married, which means memela that she's no longer a shifcha knainis, she's a bas chorin. V'chacham omer ena mekudeshes. Whereas the chachamim say that nisht, she's not mekudeshes, she's a shifcha knainis. He can't marry a shifcha knainis. So what do we do? On the one hand, we have what seems to be a Mishnah. I don't know if it's a Mishnah, but Rebbe says on the one hand that an Eved who marries a Bas Chorin in front of his master, he goes free. Yet if the master himself, Rabbi Yochanan says, I know about Braise that says that if a master himself is basically mekadesh his shifcha knainis, she does not go free. So, and they're not married. So, Kedama Rabba Bar Rav Shila, it's like we're going to see from Rabba Bar Shila in a few minutes, Kishirabu Iniach Lo Tefillin, in the context that we're going to see in a few minutes, it's talking about where his master dons tefillin, wraps tefillin on the Eved. So, Achanami, so here also we'll say the same setup, which is Kishirabu Isio Isha. Well, the first case, where the Eved gets married to a Bas Chorin, and we say that he goes free, it's where, what does it say? Kishirabu Isio Isha, right? Where he's I guess he's being the Masada Kedushin, I guess, right? That the master is being the Masada Kedushin. And says Rashi, Isio Isha di ilab di shachrare, and if not for the fact that he clearly freed him first, lo hav mi'abed isura al yodo, he wouldn't actively do an isur of arranging the union between his Eved Kanani and a Bas Chorin. So from the fact that he's actively bringing them together must mean that he was Meshachar the Eved, and the Eved is free. But now affect the Gemara though. Mi'ika midi de la avde lo mebed isur ve'ihu avad isur, but I don't understand. So we're saying that in the first case with the Eved and the Bas Chorin. So we say that the master is the Masada Kedushin, and he wouldn't actively do something for his Eved that would be not allowed, that would be Asur. So we're saying that for his Eved he wouldn't do something that's Asur, but he himself, for himself, to marry a Shifcha Knainis, the Chachamim are saying that they're not married because he didn't first free her? I don't understand. For his Eved he's concerned about doing an Isser, but not for himself. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok Ochav Mayaskinon, says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok that in the case of him, when he is Mikadesh his Shifcha, the Omar Lot Tzeibo Viskadshi Bo, that it's talking about where he says to her, he gives her a document, and he writes in it, Hareat Mikudeshes Li Bishtar Zo Kedas Moshe V'Yisrael. I imagine. Although Rashi, what does Rashi say? Hareat Mikudeshes Li. I don't know. Okay, just Hareat Mikudeshes Li. I guess that's enough. Okay. Alright, let's stick with what Rashi says. He writes in the document, Hareat Mikudeshes Li, and he gives it to her. And he says, Tzi'ibo, be free with it, and also Vizkad Shibo, and also be married with it, right? So he has a document that says Hareat Mikudeshes Li, he gives it to her, and he says, this is your get shikhr, and it's also your kiddushin. We're now engaged, Mazel Tov. So from the fact that he's saying Tzi'ibo Vizkad Shibo, he's making it clear that he was not previously Meshachrer her, he's being Meshachrer her now with this document that says Hareat Mikudeshes Li, and he's saying that this document of Hareat Mikudeshes Li is to serve both as a get shikhr as well as a shtar kiddushin. Rav Meir Savar yesh beloshen as a loshen shikhr. So the rabbis say, so Rav Meir says that they are engaged because this document is clearly a shtar kiddushin, but also it can work as a get shikhr as well, because what it's saying is, what does Rashi say? Rashi says about 10 lines into the thin lines, Reb Meir Savar yesh beloshen Hareat Mikudeshes Li loshen shikhr v'achi kamer have reuya leiskadesh libo v'eskad shibo, right? Be fit to be engaged to me, i.e. be a bas chorin. So Reb Meir says that this document that says Hareat Mikudeshes Li can serve both as a get shikhr as well as a shtar kiddushin. V'Rabbanan Savre, whereas the rabbis disagree with Reb Meir and they hold ein beloshen hazeh loshen shikhr, that a document that says Hareat Mikudeshes Li cannot work as a get shikhr. It can only work as a shtar kiddushin. But since he's relying upon this as a get shikhr, and it can't work as a get shikhr, so she remains a shifcha, and therefore it does not work in that case. Amar Bishum Levi, says Rabbi Shimon Levi, Eved sheiniach tefillin bifnei Rabbo. Says Rabbi Shimon Levi that an Eved who puts on tefillin in front of his master, Yotzel Lecheres, goes free, because avodim, right? Avodim are chayiv in mitzvahs, like right, the same mitzvahs that a woman is chayiv in, the same chiyuvim as a woman. An Eved also has. And of course, women are pturos from mitzvahs esei shezman groma. Tefillin is a mitzvahs esei shezman groma. You don't wear tefillin on Shabbos, Yom Tiv. So I think it's machlokas about whether or not you wear tefillin at night, but arguably not at night either. So it's mitzvahs esei shezman groma. So avodim don't put on tefillin. So an eved who puts on tefillin in front of his master, so mainly he goes free, right? And his master's there, and he's cool with it. So we can assume that the Eved is not actually an Eved, but a Ben Chorin. Meisve, we have a kasha. Lava Eimenu Rabo, if a master borrows money from an Eved, Oshaso Rabo Apetropis, or if his master makes him a representative for his possessions, Osheniach Tefillin Bifnei Rabo, or if an Eved puts on Tefillin in front of his master, Oshakar Shlosha Psukim Bebeis HaKnesses Bifnei Rabo, or if the Eved reads 3 psukim in the synagogue from the Torah in front of his master, Harezet lo yotza lecheres, that is not an indication that he is a free fellow. So I don't understand. On the one hand, Rabbi Shimon Levi is saying that if he puts on tefillin in front of his Rebbe, he goes, right, he's a free fellow. In front of his master, he's a free fellow. On the other end, we have a brayso that says that he's not a free fellow. So Amar Rabba bar Rav Shila kisherabo hineach lo tefillin. It's talking about where his master wrapped the tefillin on him, right? So because his master was actively being involved in the Eved wearing tefillin, it is an indication that the Eved is actually not an Eved, but a Ben Chorin. Ki also Rav Dimi Amar Yochanan. When Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he quoted Rabbi Yochanan that Misha Omar Bishas Misoso, that if a fellow says on his deathbed, Plonis Shifchosi Al Yishtaib Du Balach Mosi, that my Shifcha Knainis Plonis, don't don't work her. Right after I'm gone, don't work her. Don't work her. Kofin es hayorshim, v'chosvin la get shechur. So we force the heirs to free her and to write a get shechur. Amar lefanov, Rabbi Ami v'Rabbi Asi. And oh, interesting. So maybe Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi are saying before Rabbi Yochanan. I think that makes more sense. The other option is that they're saying to Rav Dimi. The things that Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi, I don't think that they were always in Eretz Yisrael. I think that they started out in Bavel. But generally speaking, Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi are students of Rabbi Yochanan and Eretz Yisrael. So I think maybe, should I look it up? Alright, let me look it up. Let me look it up. I didn't realize, I didn't have this ha'ara until now. Let me look it up, 1 second. Okay. As the Eibishter just gave me this ha'ara while I was recording Babylon Talmud, the Eibishter gave me a ha'ara. So Satake, Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi, we're not responding to Rav Dimi. Rav Dimi was relaying that Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi responded to Rabbi Yochanan, that 1 second, won't you, Rabbi Yochanan, agree that her children would be avodim? Meaning, Rabbi Yochanan says that if a fellow on his deathbed says to his children, don't work plonis the shifcha knainis, so Rabbi Yochanan says that they must free the shifcha knainis and write her a get shechur. But Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi say, 1 second, he's not saying free her, he's saying don't work her. Those are two different things. Meaning, what's an afkamina? Her children. Meaning, if she remains, a shifcha knainis, just that they're not going to work her, but she's technically still a shifcha knainis, her children are avodim. So Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi are arguing that all he said was don't work her, so she doesn't work, but she remains a shifcha knainis, her children will be avodim. Ki also Rabbi Shmuel bar Yehuda Amar Rabbi Yochanan. When Rabbi Shmuel bar Yehuda came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he said the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Mishamar b'shas misaso, that if a fellow says at the time of his on his deathbed, plonis shifchasi koras ruach osisa li yeosala koras ruach. If a fellow says on his deathbed, look, our shifcha kananis plonis, she helped me out quite a bit during my lifetime. Let's help her out, right? She made my life very pleasant. Let's make her life very pleasant. So we force the heirs to make her life pleasant. And if she says, look, my life will be pleasant as a baschorin, well then, they have to make her a baschorin. They have to free her, if that's what she wants. My time, mitzvah l'kaim devei hames, the reason is that it's a mitzvah to do what the nifter wants, right? Right? It's the one time in your life that we listen to what you want to do, right when you're about to die. Alright, what do you want me to tell you? Okay, well, the day of your death is the day that you can make any request that you want. A little bit too late. Alright. Yeah, okay. What do you want me to tell you? Well, you never know what day you're going to die. That's the key. That's the key. Aha. Mitzvah l'kaim divrei hames. Right, you never know. Maybe this is your last day on earth. So anything you want, the people have to do. Maybe it's... but maybe they only figure that out after the fact. Maybe it only works after the fact. That once you die, then it's like, oh yeah, he said to do this. Yeah, it's probably like that. Alright. Well, maybe we could find some other loophole. Alright, 1 second, excuse me. Alrighty, I'm back. Alright, where are we? Amar HaMeimer, says HaMeimer, Hamafkir Avdo, if a fellow makes his Eved Hefker, okay, ownerless. So also Eved Ein Lo Takone. So HaMeimer says, well, that Eved is stuck. My time, why is he stuck? Well, Gufe Lo Konile, well, because the Guf, the body, the Eved himself no longer belongs to the master because he was mafkir the Eved. Isurahu the Ikagabe. The problem is because there was no get shichur, he can't marry a Jewish woman because he would need to get shichur for that. But the thing is, the Isura lo matzi maknile, and the thing is, the master can no longer write the Eved to get shichur because he's no longer belongs to the master. So he's basically stuck in between mode, which is that he's no longer an Eved, but he also can't get married to a Baschor, and he also can't marry a Shifcha Kanainis because he's no longer in Eved, so he's kind of shtickle stuck. Omer Rav Ashi laHameimer. Now Rav Ashi says to Hameimer, Omer Ula Omer Reb Yochanan, but didn't Ula say the name of Reb Yochanan, Reb Chia, by Oven Omer Rav, Echod Zeh, Vechod Zeh. I think we learned this yesterday, that both by if a fellow is mafkir is Eved, or if he's makdish is Eved, Yotza L'cheres v'tzorach get shichur, he goes free and he needs a get shichur. So a maimer, what do you mean he's stuck? Apparently you do write him a get shichur. So Omar lei tzorach ve'no takona. So a maimer says, look, yeah, he needs a get shichur, but you can't. But in actuality, in reality, practically speaking, you actually can't write him a get shichur though, because he no longer belongs to the master, and you can't anymore write a get shichur. Those who say Amar Meimer says Meimer mafkir avdo v'meis also eved ein lo takona. That if a fellow makes his eved ownerless, he makes him free, be'etzim, but then, he makes him ownerless, and then he dies. So now ein lo takona, right? The eved is basically stuck because he doesn't belong to the owner anymore, and therefore he's not inherited. The heirs don't inherit the eved, so there's nobody to write him a get shichur. My time, how come? Gufe lo konile. Well, because the eved no longer belongs to the master, and he's not inherited by the heirs. Yisura udika gabe. The only thing left is that he can't marry a Jewish woman. V'yisura levrei lo moris, and that doesn't get inherited to, right? The heirs don't inherit the Isser Eishes Ish that the previous Eved of their father had, right? They don't inherit that sort of ability to write a get shichur for simply the Isser Eishes Ish. So Amr Rav Ashi laMeimer. So now Rav Ashi says to a Meimer, V'haki Asur Rav Dimi Amr Reb Yochanan. But Rav Ashi says to a Meimer, why is this Eved stuck? After all, when Rav Dimi came, he had said that if a fellow says that to on his deathbed to his children, Al Yishtaibed, right, Plonis, so they write a get shichur. So to Rav Dimi Ta'usa, yeah, but we said that Rav Dimi was right, he made a mistake, right? And Rav Ami and Rav Asi asked the kasha on it, so we said Rav Dimi was mistaken. Omli my Ta'usa. To which Ameimer says, yeah, but what was the mistake? To lo amra b'loshon shichur. The mistake was that he didn't actually say to free her. He just said that not to make her work. Ha'amra b'loshon shichur ha'chinami. But if he did say b'loshon shichur that plonis, the shifcha knanis, is free, well then they would be able to write a get shichur. Amalei Onakid Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda severely, to which Rav Ashi says that Meimar says that he holds like Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, i.e., the initial version of Rav Dimi and Rav Ami and Rav Asi, forget about it, right? That never happened, and therefore you can't make any diukim from there that if he would have said lashon shichur, then the children would be able to try to get shichur. No, that never happened. It only happened like Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, who said if he says that, make her feel good, so then make her feel good, and if that means that she wants to go free, so then free her. 1 second. Okay, there's music going on outside. Why is there music going on outside? Okay. How the skarta the avde? There was a certain the skarta, there was a certain place, there was a certain city, place. The avde is daben lovid kochavim, that there was a whole bunch, there was a group of avodim that were sold to Novi Kochavim. We're going to learn in a few days that a fellow or a yid who sells an eved to Novi Kochavim, the eved goes free. Okay. Kalumar Vasa Basroi. Now the master who these avodim were sold to then died. So also the Kamid Ravina. So these avodim now came to Ravina, meaning, right, that we should be free. Now we need to get shichur, because they hadn't yet received the get shichur, right? So when their Jewish master sold them to this Ovid Kochavim, so they, technically speaking, go free, but they haven't yet received the get shichur. So Amar Lahu. So Ravina says Zilu ahadru abnei marvosa kamoi. So now the original master is dead, but go to his heirs, v'yichtavu lechu gita decherisa, and they'll write for you a get shichur. Amru le Rabbanu le Ravinu. Now the rabbi said to Ravina, "Ve'omer amemer." But what about amemer? Hamafkir avdo v'mes oso eved ein lo takono. That if a fellow is mafkir his eved and then he dies, so that eved is stuck. And here also, right? He sold the avodim to ovdei kochavim, so they be'etzim are yotze lechiris, but they haven't yet received a get shichur. The original master is dead. How can you say that the children can write a get shichur? So Omer lehu. So Ravina responds, "Ono ki Rav Dimi sphirally." I hold like Rav Dimi, right? Who bets him. We wanted to at least infer that the children would be able to write a get shichur. Amrule, they say to Ravina, "Rav Dimi ta'usahi." Rav Dimi was mistaken. Amr lehu. So Rav Dimi says to them, "My ta'usa." What was the mistake? Tilo Amra b'lashon shichur. That he didn't say b'lashon shichur. Ha Amr b'lashon shichur achinam. But if he said b'lashon shichur, that he's being mishachrer his eved, so then the children would be able to write a get shichur. And here also by selling the avodim to ovdei kochavim, so they become free, and then the children can write a get shichur. V'ilchsuk Ravina, talachas like Ravina. I keep on coughing. I should probably drink water or something, but I'll drink water afterwards. Why not? Okay, so talachas like Ravina. So apparently, if a fellow is mafkir's eved and dies, the eved is not stuck. The children can write the get shichur. Okay, fine. Now, how Abda the Beitrei, there was an eved who belonged to two masters. One of them freed the eved. So now the eved is kind of in between state. He's 50% free. He's 50% eved. Now, we're going to learn, maybe even tomorrow, or in 2 days, maybe, tomorrow I think. We're going to learn in a Mishnah that in this case, where one master frees the eved and the other one doesn't, so then we force the other master to free his half of the eved, and then the eved has to pay the master for that value, but the master, we force him to free the eved. So the master who had not freed his part of the eved said, "Hashta shame be'rabon umafsidu le'minoi." Well, now the rabbis are going to find out that my partner freed his half of the eved, and they're going to force me to free my half of the eved. So also aknaye livno koin. So what he did was he was makne his half of the eved to his minor, his son who's a minor. And because he's a minor, the court can't force the minor to release his portion of the eved. Sholche Rav Yosef Brei Derava Lekama de Rapapus. Rav Yosef Brei Derava sent this case to Rapapa to find out what to do. Shalach le Rapapa responded, "Kasher also kenye oselo gmulu yoshev birosho." Like he did, so shall be done to him. We're gonna teach him a lesson. Onon kimlon biyanuka de mekar v'daite. Look, he thought he was so smart that he was going to be makne his portion of the eved to his son who's a minor. Well, we know a thing or two about children. De mekar v'daite de gabe zuze. They like shiny things. They like money. Mukminon leapatropis. So let us set a representative for this young fellow in order to get a price for this eved that is very appealing. And we'll take the money and we will put the money right in front of him. And the child is of course going to want these shiny coins, and like that the eved will free himself. Fellow says, I made so and so my eved free. Osui ben chorin, he is free. Areu ben chorin, he is free. Areu ben chorin. So in all of these cases, he is free, because they're all basically different variations of him being free. Esenu ben chorin, but if he as we're going to learn in a second, if he has in all these cases, right, he writes this in a document. So if in the document, it says that he is going to make him free, Rabbi Omer Kana, Rabbi says, okay, he's free because he's saying that I'm going to make him free with this document. Lo Kana, whereas the Chacham say nisht, he's not free because he's saying I will in the future with a different document make him free. And says Rabbi Yochanan, in all of these cases that we just talked about, we're talking about where it's written in a document. If a fellow in a document wrote, I've given such and such a field to such and such a fellow. Nesuna lefloni, it's given to this fellow. Arei hu he shalo, it belongs to this fellow. Arei shalo, so it belongs to that fellow. At nena floni, I will give it to ploni. So Rabbi Omer Dagos, Abach changed it to Rabbi Omer Kona, that the fellow who it's being given to is konit. Lo kona. He has not. It doesn't belong to that because to the new fellow, because the writer of the document is saying that in the future he will give it to Ploni, but not now. And Rabbi Yochanan says that in all of these cases it's written in a document. That if a fellow says, I have made Ploni my Eved a Ben Chorin, and the Eved is very honest and he says, no, he didn't actually make me a Ben Chorin. So we have to be concerned, well, maybe the master did make him a Ben Chorim, did free him, but he did it through a third party, right? He was right, as we said, so he can give the get shichur to somebody else on behalf of the Eved. So even though the Eved says that the master did not free him, it could be that he did free him by way of a third party. But on the other hand, if the master says, I wrote a get shichur and I gave it to this Eved, and the Eved says, no, it's not true. He didn't write me a get shichur and he did not give it to me. The admission of a litigant is as good or better, I guess, is the implication, than 100 witnesses, right? Meaning the Eved himself admitting that he has not been freed is worth more than 100, is worth at least as much as 100 witnesses, and therefore in that case we trust the Eved that he didn't receive this get shichur. Fine, because that was pretty specific, right? I gave it to the Eved says no, he didn't. If a fellow says that he gave a certain field to a certain fellow, and the fellow says, no, he didn't give it to me, we're concerned, well, maybe he did give him the field by way of a third party, because of you can do good for somebody even without his consent. But if he says, look, I wrote a document and I gave him the document that the field belongs to him, and he says, no, you didn't write anything, you didn't give it to me. The admittance of a litigant is as good as 100 witnesses. Okay, but who eats at the end of the day, this field is producing fruits. Who do the fruits belong to? Right? We're saying that this guy is saying that he gave his field to so-and-so, and so-and-so says, no, you didn't. So now what? Who does it belong to? And specifically, who gets to eat the fruits? Rav Chizda Omer no sein ochel. Rav Chizda says that the giver can eat the fruits. Ochel peris. Rabba Omer mishalshin es peris. Rabba says nobody can eat the fruits. And there's no argument. It depends. The father, right? If the father is still alive, and this dialogue is happening between, right, the giver and the receiver says that he didn't receive it. Okay, so if the receiver is saying that he didn't receive it, so then the father can eat the fruits. However, if the giver is dead. Oops, I'm sorry. If the receiver himself, right? If the receiver himself says, I didn't receive it, so then the giver can eat the fruits. But if it's the son of the receiver who's saying, as to my knowledge, my father never received any document saying that the field belongs to him, well, maybe the father did and he just doesn't know, in which case nobody can eat the fruits. Friends, that was daf 40 of Masechet Gittin. I hope you enjoyed. Peace out.